A lot of the bears, when they catch fish on the lip of the falls, will move away just slightly, find a more secure position to eat their fish. Of course, the salmon will struggle as long as it can. I mean, they really do need to fight for their life in those situations. Of course, they can't really overpower the bear. The bears are much too strong for that. And she dropped her fish. The fish did flop away. You know, those injuries that it had might or look to be fatal. It may not die right away. I can actually see it in the water. I don't think the camera is going to be able to pick it up, but it did swim away, even with the significant portion of its skin torn off. And when bears catch their prey, they don't kill it before they start to consume it. They just subdue it. Now she looks like she's going to try the jacuzzi. There are not very many adult females that will fish in the jacuzzi. We were watching 856 in there just a little bit ago. 128 is much smaller than 856. And sort of, you can maybe notice that if you're comparing and contrasting as she walks across the river. Number 89 is also coming back to the waterfall. See those bears on the far side of the river, fairly tolerant of one another, not like when 856 walked through. They both avoided one another. So each bear, again, they are individuals, their own dispositions, their own tolerances for not only, you know, their other bears as a population as a whole, but individual bears as well. They're very smart. They can recognize each other over days, seasons, and years. These bears have encountered one another before, likely when they come to Brooks Falls. 128 pouncing on another fish. This is an evening where they don't have to try very hard to catch their salmon. So when we do watch them eat the fish, they're going to be taking their time probably with it because food is so abundant. And now in that far pool as well, another bear coming down to the river. And you can see that bear on the right is having a slight staring contest with number 89. They just avoided one another. The one coming down to the river right now is number 755. He is also a mature adult male in his teens. Typically fishes in that far pool. He'll come usually just no further than the middle of the river. And that looks like that's where he's going to head to right now. Number 128's up on top of the rock there, eating her fish. So using that just a bit as a dinner table. What I'm seeing this evening too is the sense of urgency that a lot of these bears out of their heads to really know for sure, but the urgency that they were demonstrating, eating the fish very, very quickly. Usually in each fish they were eating in less than 2 minutes. Just a few days ago, some bears I was timing would eat their fish in less than a minute, and these are again 4 to 7 pound sockeye salmon that they're fishing for. That same speed in trying to pack on or pack as many fish in their stomach as possible as quickly as they can is really not there right now. So their fishing strategies are a little. The salmon, you know, we often talk about them as a food source for bears, but they're in their own sort of competitive world. These are the last survivors of fish that spawned here, or the offspring of fish that spawned here 2 or 3 to 5 years ago on average. So probably a mixture of generations right here. Salmon are anadromous, and that means that they are born in freshwater, they go out into the ocean to grow large, and then they come back into freshwater to spawn and die. So this is a one-way journey for them. That waterfall, it's really hard to see how tall the waterfall is in that spot, but it's probably about 6 feet high where they're trying to leap. And you can see they're almost all of them are consistently coming out of the water right at the edge of where that water starts to boil back up. So they use that extra bit of hydraulic action to give them a boost. And as they're flying through the air, look closely at their tails. They're waving their tails rapidly, and they hit the water on the top side of the waterfall if they're lucky enough to leap in the right direction. They need to hit that water running. And so they're flapping their tails quite vigorously, and they hit that water, and then they need an extra surge of energy to get up and over that last force of flowing water before they can swim upstream. And this might be the last major obstacle that they face before they find their spawning grounds. Many of these fish will spawn in the upper Brooks River, but not until later in the summer. Most of them, however, will continue through Brooks River into Lake Brooks, which is the source of this water, and then spawn in the tributaries off of Lake Brooks. Not all salmon will make the leap. You can see most of these attempts are unsuccessful. Some of them will end up spawning down here. There are a lot of fish that will spawn downstream of Brooks Falls, but that doesn't mean necessarily that the fish downstream of the falls are somehow inferior of the fish that spawn upstream. In fact, most of the fish that spawn downstream of the falls just choose to spawn down here. They don't even try to leap the falls. So this is the right place for them. But it's interesting, if you ever have the opportunity to count how many fish are making the leap. Over the past several years, I've done that on a number of occasions and end up counting in total thousands of fish jumping. And then when I compare the number of fish during those exact same counts that make it, when I crunch the numbers, I found that about 8% of the jumps are successful. So what I think that means is that the fish have to jump multiple times to make it. And they've never encountered anything like this in their life. A lot of these fish were swept over the waterfall during their out migration to sea several years ago. But there's no other waterfall, there's no barrier like this that they have to experience on their upstream migration. So this is really the first time that they're experiencing it. It's not necessarily a very cold day in Brooks River. It's probably hovering around 60 degrees or so. It is very misty. The bears, one of the common questions that we get is how can they stay in the water for so long? They're just very large animals. So when you're a more massive body, you cool down a lot slower. The water is not warm. It's probably still in the 50s at this time of the year. It will warm up at the end of the month, sometimes into the 60s or so. But they don't seem to be affected by the cold water very much at all. I have seen what I perceive to be shivering from brown bears if they're sitting in the water for long periods of time, but not very often. Most of the time they seem to be quite warm and comfortable in it. And this is an adult female here that just walked down, splashed in the jacuzzi, caught a salmon. Let's see if she eats it right here. We might get a good look at that.